Washington is looking to move forward after lawmakers wrapped up former President Trump's impeachment trial over the weekend. The Senate ultimately voted to acquit Mr. Trump for inciting the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. But some Republican lawmakers who voted against the president are already facing threats of retribution from within their own party. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes has the latest.
President Biden returned from Camp David to a city still shaking off the specter of impeachment.
Is not guilty as charged.
The Senate failed to meet a two-thirds threshold this weekend to convict his predecessor. But 7 Republicans who voted with Democrats are now facing their own reckoning.
Mr. Cassidy, guilty.
Senator Bill Cassidy was censured by Louisiana's Republican Party on Saturday. Tonight, North Carolina's Republican Party is voting on censuring longtime Senator Richard Burr.
I think that's an appropriate act.
North Carolina Congressman Dan Bishop supports the move.
Senator Burr has served North Carolina in Congress for 25 years. Doesn't he have the right to cast a vote as he sees fit?
I like Senator Burr. I'm friendly with Senator Burr, but this was an error, and the Republican Party is correct, in my judgment, to express that view.
Mr. Trump, who waved to supporters in West Palm Beach today, is still facing an election-related investigation in Georgia and a financial investigation in New York.
Didn't get away with anything yet.
Republican leader Mitch McConnell suggested those probes could spell trouble for the former president.
President Trump is still liable for everything he did while he was in office.
But South Carolina Republican Lindsey Graham argued it's the Democrats who deserve retribution for going after a former president.
If you use this model, I don't know how Kamala Harris doesn't get impeached if the Republicans take over the House, because she actually bailed out rioters, and one of the rioters went back to the streets and broke somebody's head open.
And Nancy Cordes joins me now. So, Nancy, 7 Republican senators voted to convict former President Trump. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell voted to acquit, but said that Mr. Trump was responsible for provoking the riot. Where do Republicans go from here?
Well, I think we're still in the middle of this party trying to figure out exactly where it goes from here. I mean, you've already got a couple of state GOP party apparatuses that have censured their senators, and there are a few more to go. Now Pennsylvania is talking about possibly censuring Pat Toomey, the Republican senator there who voted to convict. And interestingly, Utah's Republican Party put out a statement not too long ago, Elaine, explaining why they are not going to be censuring Mitt Romney, one of the 7 Republicans who voted to convict. And listen to this. Here's what they said. They said disagreement is natural and healthy in a party that is based on principles, not on persona. So a clear dig at this sort of cult of personality around President Trump, and an argument that the party should try to get past him. But that is not a universal sentiment. And you are seeing state parties around the country really rally to the former president's defense and, you know, essentially choose him over some of their own members.
Yeah, I mean, not a universal sentiment, making it all the more remarkable, as you note, given this atmosphere. Well, in your piece, Nancy, you mentioned some of the other investigations facing the former president. Take us through those.
Sure. So first off, in New York, state prosecutors are looking into big loans in the hundreds of millions of dollars that the president took on some of his most notable properties in New York City. We don't know a lot about what exactly it is about those loans that they're investigating, but that is an ongoing investigation. Then the district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia, as you know, is investigating any pressure that was brought to bear on election officials in that state to try to change or overturn the results of the election. And reportedly, it's not just the president who they're looking into, but also the phone call that Senator Lindsey Graham made to the Secretary of State there, asking about the possibility of throwing out certain ballots. So that is very much a live investigation, and it's only at the beginning. And then finally, in D.C., the Attorney General here is looking at, and that's the D.C. Attorney General, not the not the U.S. Attorney General, is looking at the events of January 6th at the Capitol and looking into the roots of what happened here. Obviously, there's an investigation into all the individuals who participated in that insurrection and have since been arrested. But the AG here in D.C. is also looking deeper at what sparked this insurrection, and that's something that President Trump could get tied up in as well.
Well, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi Monday announced plans to investigate the January 6th insurrection. What more can you tell us about that?
So what she wants is a sort of 9/11 style independent commission. You may recall after 9/11, Congress set up this big bipartisan independent commission to look at everything that the U.S. missed. How was the intelligence community unaware that this attack was coming? What could have been done to prevent it? And so she wants to do something similar here. Look at not just the groups in this country that backed this insurrection, but everything that led to it, and obviously what could have been done to better protect the Capitol. So that is that's something that is not necessarily aimed at going after one particular individual like impeachment, but obviously it could be an uncomfortable investigation for certain individuals. And beyond that, she is saying that Congress is clearly going to need to spend more money right away to safeguard individual lawmakers, supposedly when they travel back and forth to their home district and the like. So really an indication, Elaine, that impeachment may be behind us now, but this issue of the insurrection that took place on January 6th is far from over in the minds of many on Capitol Hill.
On another topic, Nancy, the last round of coronavirus relief passed by Congress is set to expire on March 14th. Now, the White House and congressional Democrats are pushing forward with President Biden's $1.9 trillion plan. So how does the White House intend to win the support of Republicans and get the president's legislation passed?
Right. So all of Congress is on recess this week, so it's going to look to the outside observer as if nothing is happening. But that's actually not the case. There are still aides on Capitol Hill working feverishly to finish crafting this legislation so that it is ready for lawmakers in the House and Senate to try to pass it pretty shortly after they get back. And that is still a big question facing the White House. How hard are they going to try to get Republicans on board for their plan? How much are they willing to give up to do that? Because it is still a possibility that the president could go this alone and try to do it only with Democratic support. He'd be really threading a tiny needle, especially on the Senate side, but it is possible. So those conversations between the White House and this group of 10 or so Republican senators continue. They're passing paper back and forth, and they're discussing how much they can give in particular areas. But it really remains to be seen whether this is going to be a bipartisan piece of legislation at the end of the day or a Democratic piece of legislation. And what we've heard the president say lately is that the only thing the American people care about is that it passes, and they care less about who actually passes it. And frankly, if you look at recent polling, he's probably right. The latest CBS News poll showed that 83% of Americans support another big COVID relief bill like the one that he's proposing.
Finally, Nancy, I also want to ask you about vaccines. In an interview with Axios, Vice President Kamala Harris said the administration had to start from scratch, and there was, quote, no national strategy or plan for vaccinations. Now, that appears to contradict earlier statements made by Dr. Anthony Fauci. So, Nancy, where do things actually stand with the nation's vaccine supply and getting shots into the arms of Americans?
Right. So that was probably a little bit of hyperbole on the part of the vice president. There was there was a plan, but it just was not, in the view of many who are here at the White House now, and Anthony Fauci, wasn't sufficient to meet the moment. There was a great deal of confusion, miscommunication, or lack of communication between the White House and various states, so states never knew how much vaccine they were getting from week to week. And so there has been a big focus on providing much clearer guidance to states about how much vaccine is coming their way, not just in the short term, but in the long term. There's been this very concerted effort also to boost the amount of vaccine going to the states each week, new deals being cut with the vaccine makers to boost the supply, and of course, guidance coming out from the CDC last week, or at least the beginnings of it, so that schools have a roadmap for reopening and a better understanding of which schools should be reopening where and when. So, by no means was there absolutely no plan, but you've heard from the president on down that they just feel that the approach of the previous White House was scattershot and didn't meet the moment. And I think that is it's an assessment that is probably pretty well understood at this point by observers across the political spectrum.
All right, Nancy Cordes at the White House for us. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.